Hi there, my name's Chris Ashton and we're here at the Schumacher factory, and I'm going to talk you through the new features of the SupaStox GT 1/12 scale GT12 car. Firstly, the car is available in two forms, both for £100 retail. It's under the BRCA price limit. You've got the carbon fibre version, which has a carbon fibre chassis and a fixed axle, or an S1 version which has a S1 chassis and a differential included. Both options allow good tuning for club racers and national runners alike. So the new GT car is a dedicated GT12 circuit only car, whereas the old SupaStox chassis that's been very successful was based on a car for an oval class and also for circuit racing. So the new GT has a much narrower chassis than the old car. This allows it to have less grinding on the carpet during cornering and frees the car up to corner much quicker. The chassis itself is much shorter in the rear, and the rear body posts are raised at the back, also to help the grinding problems that the old car had. The rear end is quite different. We've got now a pivot ball system instead of the link system we had before. We feel this is a little bit improved over on bumpy tracks. So included in the kit as standard is the front to rear damper. As an optional part, you can have the side dampers, which are these items here, that's option, or you can use it as standard, tuning with the O-rings like you used to do on the old car. Now this is still a pretty good method of tuning the roll damping of the car itself. It's not 100% necessary to have the side-to-side dampers, but it gives a little bit more consistency and a bit more tuning to the car. Another great feature of the new GT car is it has fully independent ride height adjustment, independently of adjusting the springs. So the springs can be set and left, and the ride height can be adjusted with a standard eccentric type housing. Now there's 4 different options that are all included in the kit for the rear, so you shouldn't have any issues in tuning the ride height for tyres between 50mm and 43mm, the most common variation in the tyre sizes. The ride height on the front is also adjustable by using small washers underneath the front hub carrier. This is a new thing that we didn't have on the old car. The springs are then used to adjust the tweak of the car rather than to adjust the ride height, which means that the car can be set up nice and easily and more consistently without having to change washers or preload on the spring, which can affect the roll stiffness and other variants on the chassis setup. The springs on a car can then be used to set the tweak of the car much easier. So to get the right balance on each 4 corner of the wheels, you can slightly adjust the spring if you have slightly heavier radio gear on one side, or with this car the servo is slightly offset or something like that. You can adjust the tweak of the car so you've got equal pressure on the 4 wheels. This allows the car to do equal things around left-handers and right-handers. It's a real key thing for the setup of the car. It's very important. Also, while we're talking about the suspension setup, we've now incorporated Droop screws into the front beam and into the rear pod arrangement. So you can independently adjust the droop of the car by tightening and loosening the grub screws. Now there's 2 options on the rear. You've got one centre droop screw, or you can use the 2 side by side. It gives slightly different performance depending on which ones you use. Personally, I prefer the centre one because it allows the rear end to pivot completely around the centre line of the car. Covered the rear droop adjustment using the grub screw in the rear pod arrangement. The front droop is adjusted again by grub screws. These are in the front beam. So it allows you to set the droop of the car depending on what size tyres you have. So if you have a bigger tyre, normally it would give you more droop, smaller tyre, less droop, but this can now be adjusted using the screws in the pivot block, rather than what you had to do on the old car was space up the beam, which caused a problem because you had more preload on the spring, you had to adjust the spring. Now it's completely independent. So you can adjust the droop with the grub screws, the ride height with the washers inside the wheel hub carry arrangement, and then just the front springs remain pretty much the same. You don't have to adjust those too much now. Included as standard are 4 ball bearings in the wheels. We have a new bumper arrangement which is much lighter than the previous car and much simpler to use, just 2 screws through the standard posts here. The front beam and the front beam brace has been slightly modified. Now includes the popular MI5 pivot ball option included in the kit. And obviously with this option you need some way of adjusting the damping of the front end. So we have small O-rings that you can apply some pre-tension to adjust the damping. The more tension, the more damping of the front end. So you can adjust more, there's more tuning options with that setup. We've gone to a more traditional 12th scale size servo saver. You can adjust the Ackerman on this servo saver just like you could with the old one by moving the pivot balls further forward and further back. So moving them further forward tends to give a more aggressive feel to the steering, and moving them back gives less steering up until a certain point. So we've now got fully straight arms, and the arms are also straight at ride height, so you get less bump steer issues than you had previously. So battery options on the GT. We preferred the transverse battery position when we did all our testing, so we've stuck with that. Provides a very easy to drive car and a bit more stable than the lengthways battery that's sometimes been incorporated in circuit cars. You can use a standard 1-cell battery, which is like the BRCA specified rule, or you can use a 2S shorty pack, which is used in some countries. So the 2S shorty pack is fitted just by removing 4 pips from the battery tray, and allows you to get the 2S shorty battery into the car. Also available for the GT is an optional LiPo battery strap. So if you don't like using tape, you prefer the quick and easy method of just putting the battery in, putting the clips on with the tray, there is that option too. So also on the rear end of the car we have the new CNC transmission mounts. These are much lighter than the previous ones, much less cumbersome. So also included with the CNC mounts, on the base plate of the pod you've got an option to put a small brass optional weight to balance the left to right tweak of the pod. So normally when you have a differential, you've got much more weight on the outside of the differential because that's where the main differential is housed. So what we've done to counteract that is to add a small piece on the bottom of the pod here. Also, while we're on the differential, we've included a slightly weightier drive dog on the left hand side. So you've got more weight counterbalancing the weight of the diff on the right hand side. The diff's now all black, looks pretty cool. We've also put a small grub screw in the drive dog, so when you take the car apart, you take the wheels off, the diff doesn't fall out like it did on the previous model. You've got a small grub screw holding the diff in so you can work on the car without the diff falling out. What we've done with the GT is we've given you more options for servo position as well. So there's more holes already included in the chassis for the most common servo mounting positions. This one has the new KO servo in, which mounts with the new mounting position on the front of the servo. This allows a bit more room for the radio gear, and you've also got holes for the Futaba servo and the Core RC servo, which are one of the most popular. While we're on the chassis, you can see we've included 2 holes here, one here, one here. This allows you to use the Schumacher pivot balance points. So it's a small pivot balance system that you use with the car front and rear, and you can balance the car left to right. So independent of tweak or suspension or anything like that, you can position your radio gear to allow you to get the left to right balance of the actual chassis perfect every time. This is going to give you really consistent, safe handling if the weight is all in the right place. So the old SupaStox car that has been very successful, 4 times BRCA champion, we wanted to retain some of the great features that that car held, and one that we wanted to retain is the real simple way of adjusting the front camber. So the front camber is a really important adjustment because it allows you to have a different contact patch on the front tyre. So my personal preference is when the grip is higher, I tend to run more camber on the car. When the grip is lower and you want more steering, you need to run less camber. So there we have the new SupaStox GT, the latest 1/12 circuit GT12 racer from Schumacher. Thanks for tuning in. I hope you enjoyed the video. I'll see you at the track soon.